And good morning, grandchildren. It's a beautiful 4th of July morning. Call this Independence Day. Not that we're independent from God, but it celebrates when the United States became independent from Great Britain. There were only 13 states back then. There's 50 now. Isn't that amazing? All right. This is Curious George Visits the Library. Oh, look at Curious George there amidst all those books. Isn't that neat? All right, let's see what happens when he goes to the library. I don't think monkeys can read. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. Today, George and his friend, the man with the yellow hat, went to the library. Story hour is today at 11 o'clock, it says. And there they go up the steps to the library. George had never been to the library before. He had never seen so many books before either. Everywhere he looked, people were reading. Some people read quietly to themselves. But in the children's room, the librarian was reading out loud. So here they are. It comes in here, and look at all the people sitting around at the tables reading, very quietly reading. But there was a children's story room, and somebody was doing the reading. That. Let's see here. It was story hour. George loved stories. He sat down with a group of children to listen. The librarian was reading a book about a bunny. George liked bunnies. Look at there. She's holding it up and showing pictures, kind of like Grandpapa does. There's the man in the yellow hat. He's leaving. George, sit still and listen, George. What would you do if you were at the library and a monkey walked in? Behind the librarian was a book about a dinosaur. George liked dinosaurs even more than bunnies. He hoped she would read it next. But the librarian read a book about a train. George tried to sit quietly and wait for the dinosaur book to be read. But sometimes it's hard for a little monkey to be patient. Well, we've learned that about George, haven't we? It's hard for him to be patient. You know what it is to be patient? That means like when mommy says wait, you have to sit there and wait. It's hard. When the librarian started a story about jungle animals, George could not wait any longer. He had to see the dinosaur book. He tiptoed closer. "Look, a monkey!" shouted a little girl. The librarian put her finger to her lips. "We must be quiet so everyone can hear," she said nicely. "But there's a monkey," said a little boy. The librarian smiled. She agreed. When she finished reading the Jungle Book, the librarian reached for the dinosaur book. Where did it go? And where was George? So here she is, reading this book, and George is about to nab that book there. And everybody's excited. Look at that monkey! And off George goes. A little crook. He's a thieving monkey. He stole the book on the dinosaur. George was ready to take the dinosaur book home and read it with his friend when another book caught his eye. This book was about trucks. George wanted to take it home too. Do you like books about trucks? And here was a book about elephants. George loved elephants. He added that to his pile. This sounds like my children when they used to go to the library. Your mommies were just like this. There's his book on dinosaurs, and here he's found a book on elephants, and he's holding a book about trucks. He's finding exciting books. Your mommies would come home with so many books sometimes. George found so many good books, he soon had more than he could carry. He leaned himself against a shelf to rest. Squeak went the shelf. Shh, said a man. Squeak went the shelf again, and it moved. Why, it wasn't really a shelf after all. George had found a special cart for carrying books. What luck. Now George could carry all the books he wanted. He rolled the cart between the shelves and stacked up books about boats and kites and baking cakes. He climbed higher to reach books about cranes and planes. So here he is, and that man's telling him to be quiet because he bumped against that shelf there and it moved. See, there's that symbol again for noises. Squeak. And here he's picking books by the gazillions. I think the library has a limit on how many books you can check out anyway. At last, George had all the books he could handle. He couldn't wait to head home and start reading. Right in front of him was a ramp leading to the door. George was curious. Could he roll the cart all the way home? Down the ramp George went. The cart rolled faster and faster. "Stop!" a librarian volunteer shouted. "Come back here with my cart." But George was too excited to listen. The cart was picking up speed and George was having fun. Here's the ramp and George's pile of books. Zoom! There he goes down that ramp, and look at the people chasing after him. Boy, what a mess George is about to create. I think we're about to have a serious problem. Do you think we are? Until crash! George and the cart ran smack into a shelf of encyclopedias. You have no idea what an encyclopedia is because you'll only know Google in your life. Books flew up in the air, and so did George. He landed in a big pile right between O and P. Whoa! Crash! Look at those books going everywhere. Woo! I bet that made a lot of noise. "Oh no!" moaned the volunteer when he saw the mess George had made. "How am I going to put away all these books?" "I'd like to borrow this one," said a boy from Story Hour. "And I'll take this one." With the help of George and the children, the books were soon sorted in no time. Soon there was just a small pile of George's favorites left. Wow, what a mess. Look at all the books on the floor. George has got one on his head like a hat. Wow, they're putting all the books up for the librarian. What a nice group of children. Even George is attempting to help. "Would you like to take those books home with you?" the volunteer asked George. Then he took George to a special desk and helped him get his very own library card. George was holding his brand new card when his friend arrived with a stack of books of his own. "There you are, George," he said. "I see you are all ready to check out." George and his friend gave their books to the librarian. He smiled when he saw George's pile. "I was wondering where this dinosaur book went," she said. "It's one of my favorites, too." The librarian stamped the books and handed them back to George. Here he is getting his library card. You have to have that to check books out in the library. And here he is getting all of his books. Wow, George can hold things in this hand, hold it with his foot and his other hand. It's amazing. Monkeys are like that, though. With the books under one arm, George waved goodbye to the volunteer, the librarian, and the children from Story Hour. "Come see us again, George," said the librarian, waving back. "Enjoy your books." There they all are. Everybody is waving goodbye to George as he leaves the library. Even the librarian, she's multitasking. She's stamping books and she's waving. There goes George and the man with the yellow hat. And he did. He went home and read. The end. He's getting the book about dinosaurs read to him. He loves dinosaurs. And I love you, grandchildren.